Hey guys, what's good? It's me, J-Lei. You're listening to J-Lei Tells, and today J-Lei tells the strange and disturbing story of Colby 2012. Let's get into it. Okay, so just a quick heads up, this story is not for any dog lovers out there because this is a story of a son who loved his dog way too much. So, who is Colby? Colby is a 7-year-old Labrador owned by an anonymous family of 3, and for the sake of this video, we are going to refer to them as dad, wife, and son. So, back in 2012, the dad noticed that his 7-year-old Labrador named Colby had been acting rather out of character than what he usually would be. Instead of his happy, playful self, he had become nervous, withdrawn, and really timid around people. And from what the dad can tell, there was no real apparent cause for the dog's change in behaviour. So about a week into this weird behaviour that Colby was exhibiting, the dad took the dog to the vets in hopes to find out some answers as to why the dog was behaving the way it was. And that is when Concerned Dad 1965 appeared on Reddit and created a post seeking help and advice from its users. The post was titled, "I think my teenage son may have sodomized my dog and I do not know what to do. Can you help?" In this post, the dad wrote, "I got him in yesterday, and after an examination, the vet told me that he believes the dog has been sodomized. His anus had been slightly damaged in a way that was consistent with that sort of thing. He said he can't really imagine that his injuries could have come about any other way. So already, now I'm pretty upset and sort of freaking out. Who would do such a thing to a dog?" So naturally, the dad was really shocked, he was confused, and he was sick to his stomach at the thought of someone violating his dog, so he decided to narrow it down to a few potential suspects. He considered his neighbours, his gardeners, any kind of family friends that may have visited the house during the time that Colby decided to act all withdrawn and timid, but no one really stood out. The only 2 options that it could have been was his wife or his son. So after returning home from the vets and a lot of soul searching, the dad surmised that out of the 2, it unfortunately was probably the son who was the logical perpetrator. So taking off his dad hat and replacing it with his Inspector Gadget hat, the dad decided to go investigate and search his son's room to find something, anything. And he writes, "I didn't really know what I was expecting to find, and I didn't really find anything there that screamed guilty until I decided to check his browser history. I found that he had been on a bestiality forum recently and a site with pictures of that sort of thing. I felt like I was going to throw up." Now, I know this isn't definite proof or anything, but it sure doesn't look good. The more I think about it, the more I'm convinced my son has been sodomizing our dog. I haven't told my wife yet or done anything about it. I have not let him alone with the dog since. I am totally confused and upset and I don't know how to proceed with this. Reddit, please help. Now, a lot can be forgiven on the dad's part of how he handled this situation because seriously, how often do you get into these situations in life? But in hindsight, keeping it from his wife probably isn't the best thing to do. Little did he know at that point he had done fucked up a little bit. Also, posting an anonymous post of such nature to a website like Reddit will attract a variety of responses from the public, not many of which proved useful in any way. However, after being confronted on his search history on bestiality, the son was, for lack of a better word, kind of fucked. He eventually admitted that at some point in the past week, he had in fact stuck his finger up the dog's anus, as well as the handle of a hairbrush. Now, the son never clarified why he did this, and I don't know if the dad asked or not, but the son did say when he did it, he meant no harm to the dog, and as soon as the dog yelped out in pain, he stopped immediately. So the dad, not wanting to believe that the son had these ill and perverse intentions towards the dog, decided he was going to sweep it under the rug, not mention anything to the wife, and book the kid into therapy as soon as possible. And side note A, how the hell do you go about booking that kind of therapist for that kind of situation and being able to keep it from your wife? And side note B, I probably watch an unhealthy amount of police interrogation videos. And I found that 9 out of 10 times when a perpetrator is accused of a particular crime, at first they'll initially deny any knowledge of it. But as the rules begin to break down, they might actually admit to a lesser offensive crime in order to receive the minimum ramifications for it. In short, between the vet's assessment of Colby, the son's search history on his computer, and his partial admittance to foul play, I do believe that this son fucked that dog. But wait, because unfortunately, there's more. Because a mere 2 months later, Concerned Dad 1965 took to Reddit once again with a post titled, "I am the father and Redditor whose son sodomized our dog with a hairbrush 2 months ago. He's done it again and I don't know what to do. Please help." And here's what he had to say. "Well, this morning I caught my son in the backyard holding on to Colby's genitals while playing tug of war with him. Granted, this isn't sodomization and the dog seemed to be okay, but my son was basically grabbing and massaging the dog's privates as he held him in place under the guise of a tug of war game. Obviously, I stormed outside and grabbed him in anger and we had a very serious and angry talk. He had promised me to never treat the dog in any remotely inappropriate way after the last incident. I put him in his room for the rest of the day. My wife is still at work and I do not know what to do. I am at my wit's end. Apparently, therapy has not been working. Reddit, how do I deal with this? I think I have to tell my wife now, which is not exciting since she's been in the dark about the sodomizing incident for 2 months. I am not sure how to deal with all of this." Now, I don't know why this man kept coming back to Reddit and asking for advice. Didn't he see the comments on his last post? Because once again, this time around, a slew of comments came flurrying in. Some found the whole situation funny, some blamed the dog, some blamed the parents, but ultimately everyone agreed that he needs to inform his wife and that poor Colby needed to be rehomed and protected immediately. But eventually, Concerned Dad 1965 would take the advice from Reddit and he would go on to tell his wife, and let me tell you now, my girl was pissed. She's like, "Why has my son been molesting our dog and why have you kept it from me for the last 2 months? What kind of men am I living under the same roof with?" So she grabs her purse, throws up the peace sign and she's like, "Deuces, I'm out." And she chose to stay at her sister's for the evening while she had time to calm down and wrap her head around this fucked up situation. And side note C, my girl should have taken that dog with her that night, but she did not. If I had found out that my son had been sodomizing my dog and that my husband had been keeping it from me, the last thing that I would do is leave that house and leave that dog alone with my son who sodomizes my dog and my spouse that covers it up. But like we said previously, how often do you go about getting yourself into these kind of situations where you know how to respond accordingly? So I can't really judge my girl for wanting to run away for a minute and temporarily forgetting about the dog. As for the son, he was furious at his father for breaking his promise and humiliating him in front of his mother. Listen, there is family drama and there is family drama. After this, Concerned Dad 1965 went quiet on Reddit, and a lot of users hoped that this meant that no news meant good news. However, a lot of people were invested in this situation and they stayed glued to their screens hoping for some kind of update, and only 2 months later, they would get one. In a Reddit post titled, "Update, I am the father and Redditor whose teenage son sodomized our family dog Colby. It's been 2 months since the latest incident and my family is falling apart." And girl, in this post he explains what happened when the wife eventually returned to the family home. "So after staying at her sister's house for a few days, my wife came home and we got into several arguments over the next week or so about our son and what to do about this. And of course, there was plenty of me being painted as a bad guy for not including her on a major parenting issue. I decided to take Reddit's advice that we should start looking for a new home for Colby, since he obviously wasn't going to be safe with us anymore. My wife did not like this idea, and after several more arguments, I came to find out that she suspected our son never even abused the dog to begin with. She tells me that she has spoken to our son about this and he is denying ever doing anything. So basically, I had my son denying that he ever sodomized the dog, and my wife's now pissed off because she is hearing 2 conflicting stories from us. She even brought up in the heat of the argument that she thinks, if anything, I sodomized the dog, which, as you can imagine, made me absolutely furious. Listen, this 15-year-old kid managed to hoodwink his mother into thinking that his dad was some crazy, lying, secret-keeping dog molester. Side note D, the fact that this teenage boy was able to sexually abuse animals and has the ability to manipulate people's thoughts and feelings gives me very big red flag energy. Anyways, after weeks of arguing about Colby, their son, secrets and other marital issues, the wife had decided that she wanted a trial separation, and she ended up kicking the dad out the house, leaving it just her son and Colby. The dad did in fact attempt to take Colby with him when he left the family house, but the wife shut that shit down immediately because she didn't want her dad to have an opportunity to molest the dog anymore. So about a month passes with the dad staying with one of his friends, and all the while him and his wife, they keep arguing over the phone and in person. He and his son's relationship has completely broke down, with his son continuing to deny sodomizing a dog in any kind of way. All in all, things were looking pretty bleak for Concerned Dad 1965. And then that is when he takes to Reddit once again with a post titled, "I am the father/redditor who lost his family after it came to light that my son was sexually abusing our dog Colby. I have good news for everyone. Colby is safe, but there is still the question of what to do with my son." In it, he describes about how his life and his relationship with his family are at the point of almost disrepair, with the most recent argument happening just a few days before he went on to write this post, stating, "So, fast forward to just a couple of days ago. I am at work nearing the end of my day when suddenly my phone rings and it's my wife. I pick it up and she's sobbing and obviously very upset. She tells me that Colby has bitten my son and he has gone to the hospital to get stitches. She says Colby bit him in the lower abdomen 2 times. She doesn't know what to think. Obviously, I know exactly what happened. I could tell that she finally knew I was right. Colby would never bite anyone unprovoked. He is an incredibly friendly dog and has no history of biting or being aggressive at all." When we got off the phone, I felt this rage building inside of me. I felt like it was finally time for this shit to end. Colby had stood up for himself against my son, who had betrayed both of us. I couldn't prove it, but I just know my son was abusing a dog again, and I felt responsible for having left him alone with Colby all of these times. It was like Colby finally lashed out in desperation after having no one there to protect him. I felt sick to my stomach for having abandoned my dog with my kid, who obviously don't give a fuck about me or any of us, as long as he can keep getting away with this shit. So the dad storms home to confront his son and to rescue his dog once and for all. So he's there popping off at his son, calling him a liar and a general piece of shit and trying to take the dog, and the wife is in a corner crying and pleading the dad not to leave anymore. It's a whole entire mess and the dad knows it, so he chooses not to stay and he takes himself and his dog out of the family home over to his friend's house, and he nor the dog ever returned to the family home again. The Reddit updates finally stopped, and that is the story of Colby 2012. Here's a bit of an epilogue for you though. In 2018, Concerned Dad 1965 took to Reddit one more time to give us one final update. He said that Colby had lived out a long, happy and safe life, that he and his son were on better terms, as long as they don't mention what happened in 2012. And as for the wife, according to the dad, she ended up getting addicted to drugs and ended up performing sexual favours in order to find a rabbit. You could not write this shit, but someone did, and it became infamous as one of Reddit's most disturbing stories. For more retellings of strange, dark and mysterious Reddit posts, make sure you hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next story. And until then, stay safe out there.